I'm the younger, taller brother.
Better looking.
As Nick called me and asked me to speak about this, I was like, this isn't my thing. I'm not a funeral guy, celebration of life guy. I kind of avoid the situations. But I started thinking about the best way I can describe Sandy is the moments in my life that I remember just from early age to older age. She was always that static person. My grandparents all died pretty young, and my Aunt Sandy, which really she was my grandma at that point, she was always that figure that we'd go visit, hang out. But as a kid, I remember going to her house, and she'd be like, hey, we're going to church. And I'd be like, cool, going to a church I've never been to. And she would take me to her church, and it'd be like a kids conference. They'd bring in the muscle team guys, like breaking chains and slamming concrete rocks, and then we'd go to eat somewhere for lunch after church. And those were like the pivotal moments that I remember. Like, they always put church first, always put God first, always put doing things with family first. And I think that's rubbed off kind of with my family. But I remember being young, going to their house, and I don't know if this is actually true. They had green carpet, right?
Probably.
Really like bright green carpet. I might be making that up, but there was green carpet, I'm pretty sure. We'd go visit. Uncle Nelson was like my absolute hero. I remember telling Mom, they were like, hey, you're going to be short. You're never going to be tall. And I'm like, no, there's Uncle Nelson. They're like, he's not blood. And I'm like, I'm going to be 6 foot. And I turned out to be 6 foot, so I broke everything there. And I just remember being there, and Sandy and Nelson's relationship was just awesome to see, because they were polar opposites, but they worked so well together. And I remember us going there, and I probably wasn't the easiest kid to deal with, but we'd eat dinner, and then I would grab all this food and put it on my plate, take 4 bites of my hamburger like most kids do, and Sandy'd be like, no, you need to eat all that food. And I kind of blame her for today, but kind of learned off of that. And then I remember they had the pool, and we'd go swim in the pool, but she'd be like, hey, you got to wait 30 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I get it, I'll drown. But there's always this internal bait. And then there was the bunnies in the cage. There was Super Nintendo. There was everything. And every time I went there, it was like a peaceful home away from home. And I remember, like, I don't think Mom probably, I never complained about going to Sandy and Nelson's house. It was one of my favorite things to do. And that was my childhood. And like, they lived in Florida, then they moved up, and I was like, oh, everyone's close now because we're now in Georgia, and we all got to spend time together. And then we got older. My parents abandoned me and moved to Tennessee, and I told them I wasn't going. And I remember Sandy was like, you can come stay with us. And being, I think I was 17, 18.
I did not abandon you at 17.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. But, they were like, they just welcomed me in. And who knows that inviting an 18-year-old teenage punk to come stay at your house is probably not the easiest thing to do, but I needed to stay in Georgia. And I remember we came in, we didn't set any guidelines, any rules, just kind of did it. And I was like, yeah, I'll pay you $150 a month in rent. I never paid them rent. I think I paid them once when I got there. And she was just always so, like, do you have everything do you need? Do you have, like, what's your grocery list? And I'd be like, just cottage cheese, bacon, and black olives. And that's all she would buy me. That's what I asked for, and that's what I would eat. And she was always like, hey, I made a steak for you. And I'd be like, oh, thanks. And she was just always caring for me, even though I was doing nothing in that household to support anything. And I remember one of the biggest moments of my life is when I was moving out, and I felt convicted. And I was like, I need to pay Aunt Sandy my rent. It's like 4 months back pay. And I went up to her, and I was like, hey, here's like $500. And I was like, I did it. And she looks at me, and she's like, no, you keep it. She's like, we loved having you. And it was just that spirit of peace. It was like, I know when I was Sandy and Nelson, it was always going to be a peaceful, and they're always so interested in like what I was doing. I stayed with them, and me and my soon-to-be wife went to Hawaii. And I remember like 3 days before, I was panicked. And she's like, are you okay? And I was like, absolutely not. I can't find my debit card. And I'm going to Hawaii. And she's like, you have your license though. And I'm like, I have my license, but then I can't buy anything. And she tore the whole house up. Didn't find my debit card, but she found this random credit card I applied for, and it was a Macy's credit card, and she was like, hey, here you go. And then she gave me like $250, and she's like, you use this, blah, blah, blah. And she just went out of her way to be nurturing and being there for me. And then when I got engaged to Casey, she like brought them into the fold. I think my biggest regret is as we got married and as we had kids and we moved, probably on our end, busy life, we never got to really connect once we had kids and we moved away. But every 6 months, I'd get that Facebook message, and it'd be like a Winnie the Pooh little diagram, like thinking of you, and I'd be like, oh, and I'm like, I don't even know if she knows that I'm messaging back, but you know, it's like she was always willing to like put the carrot out there. And for me, my prayer is that we, as we sit here and we embody what Sandy did for us, that we take that and we pass that to our kids, and we try to live that. Like, I want to be people's peace. I want to be that person that can be there for my grandkids, you know, on that. Again, we called her Aunt Sandy. And to this day, I don't really know what she was, but she was my grandma. And she was always there to bridge the gap with family, bring us together. I think Charlie said it the best, the holidays. Like, how awesome were the Christmases? How awesome was the Thanksgiving? You know, the wet dressing. People still don't understand what wet dressing is, but we still eat it all the time, you know. And I try to push in my family, and I get a lot of pushback on it, but we'll fix that in memory. But no, we love Sandy, we love Nelson, we loved what she brought. And I think in heaven, like, God's like, well done, good and faithful servant. You have bridged the gap for people. You were the person at church or person in the community that's really reaching their hand out, like no, come do life with us. And for me, I mean, that's all I want. I want to go to heaven, and I want Jesus to be proud for what I did. And I think that she was a element of life that we can look at and kind of model our life after. That's all I have.
Beautiful. Yeah,